Order. Gregory Stafford to move the motion.
I'm going to move that this House has considered frozen overseas state pensions. Mr Dowd, I want to thank the Backbench Business Committee for allowing this debate, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. For over 70 years, successive governments have upheld the frozen pensions policy. The result has been not only a severe financial toll on those impacted, but also a heavy emotional burden. These are individuals who built their lives and careers in the United Kingdom, contributed their share through national insurance, and then, often later in life, moved abroad, in many cases to join family members. In doing so, they have found themselves victims of an outdated policy, most of whom only first became aware of the policy after noticing that their state pension was not increasing in line with policies such as the triple lock, proudly founded by the Conservatives. Let me be clear about what this policy entails. British citizens who retire in certain countries, for example, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, most of the Commonwealth in fact, where they are denied the annual inflationary increases to their state pension. A person retiring to the USA sees their pension uprated yearly. Cross the border into Canada, however, and those increases stop. This can result in elderly pensioners receiving as little as £60 a week on average, despite the current basic state pension rate being £176.45 per week. As many as 4 in 10 frozen pensioners report struggling to afford the most necessities like food or medicine. Now, Mr Dowd, it may be tempting to dismiss this as a problem over there, but British overseas pensioners are citizens who have lived, worked and grown up here, and they remain citizens here. They are constituents, and with the changes to overseas voting rules in 2024, many are now registered to vote once again in United Kingdom elections. That means there are up to 500,000 voices who feel forgotten, neglected and increasingly betrayed by successive governments. And I do not believe, Mr Dowd, that geography should just be an excuse for a lack of morality. And they are making their voices heard. Over 75% want their representative to commit to ending frozen pensions. And indeed, in 2016, at an all-party round-table event, the now Deputy Prime Minister called for, and I quote, a change on frozen pensions and a commitment to finding a solution. I'm glad she did so then. I'm concerned that the government is not doing so now. So I would be grateful if the Minister could confirm whether this is still the position of the Deputy Prime Minister and indeed the government. Since I first raised this issue in the House of Commons last year, I have read and heard many compelling stories. For example, that of Anne Puckridge. Now 100 years old, Anne remains an inspiration to all of us, having served in the Navy, the Army and the RAF during World War II. Let me repeat that. The Royal Navy, the Army and the RAF. Serving 6 months in each branch during the war itself, I believe it is fair to state she has paid her dues to this country. After the war, she lived and worked for the vast majority of her life in the United Kingdom until she moved to Canada in 2001. She is one of around 60,000 veterans impacted by this policy. The emotional impact of this policy cannot be overstated. Many of those affected say they were never informed their pension would be frozen when they moved. Anne was not told, and the campaign reports that 86% of pensioners affected had no idea the policy even existed before they were impacted by it. Too little, too late. Yes, happy to.
I thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate him on this timely debate. Just on the issue that he has alluded to regarding the 100-year-old, would he agree with me that the frozen pension issue isn't just a factual position that people see a pension now that is quite small, relatively speaking, to the pension they would have got if they were still resident in the UK, but their final years of existence on this earth will mean that they will have a paltry pension to pass away on because of this policy.
I entirely agree with the honourable member, and I will come on to some of that later in my speech, but he's absolutely right. This isn't just the financial impact, though that is severe. There's a moral impact here that constituents of ours who have paid their dues, and in the case of Anne, more than paid their dues in terms of what they've done for this country, are going to end up at their end of days on pretty much nothing when inflation is taken into account. So last December, Mr Dowd, I challenged the Prime Minister during Prime Minister's questions on his decision not to meet with Anne during her visit to the UK, a visit that required an 8,500-mile round trip, which is no mean feat at the age of 99. She was not offered a meeting with the Prime Minister. Anne's story is sadly emblematic of a much wider injustice that continues to perpetrate our elderly. I mean, only this year we saw continued poor treatment through policies such as the removal of the winter fuel payment and the betrayal of the WASPy women, both causes which were vociferously supported by the Labour Party during opposition. They're happy to freeze pensioners and they're happy to freeze their pensions. The Prime Minister's refusal to meet with Anne is a symbol of a government that is, I regret to say, unwilling to listen to some of the most elderly and vulnerable amongst us. And this brings me to the crux of today's debate. The government does not seem willing to engage with its overseas electorate impacted by this policy, at least in any meaningful way. I would like to remind the House that 158 parliamentarians from across the UK and Canada wrote to the government last October calling for an end to this policy, and that more than 140,000 people have signed Anne's petition to meet with the Prime Minister last December. The most concerning in the government's current line of response is the quoted figure estimating the cost of ending the policy altogether. Based on calculations it makes annually, the government is currently quoting an annual figure of £950 million per year to uprate and backdate all pensions. But this is not the ask. The End Frozen Pensions campaign has made it abundantly clear they are not calling for retrospective compensation. What they are asking for is simply to receive the same annual increases going forward that are awarded to pensioners living here and in the USA and in France and a host of other countries. The cost of such a policy change is a mere £55 million a year, a fraction of the overall pensions budget. So today I ask the Minister, will he agree to meet with the End Frozen Pensions campaign to accurately assess the cost of what is actually being requested by the pensioners? And will he work with us in good faith to find a solution that reflects the modest and realistic nature of their appeal? And beyond this severe individual hardship, there are important and growing geopolitical consequences too, to the point where this policy is now creating serious diplomatic tensions with some of our closest allies, as 50 out of the 56 Commonwealth nations are frozen. How can we speak proudly of our Commonwealth partnerships while refusing full pensions to veterans living in the Falkland Islands, to British-born nurses in Barbados, or to former civil servants living in Canada? These are countries with deep and historic ties to the UK, and yet these countries are forced to subsidise our negligence. Australia and Canada have made their frustrations clear. Canada has been formally requesting a resolution to this issue for over 40 years. In October last year, 103 Canadian parliamentarians wrote to the Prime Minister urging him to address this issue. The Canadian government, like Australia's, already provides full state pension increases to their own citizens living here in the UK. Meanwhile, they are left picking up the tab for British citizens residing in their countries. With both Canada and Australia having only just recently held national elections, and with likely renewed trade discussions on the horizon, I would further ask the Minister what assessment he has made of this policy's impact on our future ability to trade and meaningfully engage with these countries. And also, will he look at how reciprocal barriers to this policy may be overcome? Mr Dowd, as I draw to a close, let me return to the heart of this matter. This policy causes financial hardship on a large number of those impacted, but it also causes indignity. It isolates elderly people, and their repeated dismissal by this government is leading to their political disenfranchisement. Putting an end to this blatant injustice is not only achievable, but it is affordable. £55 million a year is not a sum beyond our means. What is ultimately lacking here is not money, but political will. I therefore pose one practical ask to the Minister. Will he meet with campaigners more fully to understand their demands? And if not to resolve this issue outright, will he at least commit to acknowledging their request for uprating on a going-forward basis only? And will he agree to work with myself and campaigners to explore how, at a minimum, awareness of the policy might be improved, given the vast majority of impacted pensioners still report having no knowledge of the policy's existence prior to moving overseas? Mr Dowd, all these pensioners are asking for is a level playing field, so that those who have contributed can live out their retirement with dignity and security.